So earlier I had a video talking about if the blood plague was the least realized mechanic in the game, and this time I want to talk about another one that is not. It's not at that level, but it's definitely a mechanic that hasn't been very well realized, and that would be the leaders in State of Decay 2. That would be what the Warlord, the trader, the sheriff, and the builder. Oh, yeah, I should probably say, yeah, welcome to the video. Fox is going to talk about things again. We're going to be talking about the leaders and also may answer a question about myself. It's a question that people ask of me, and that the two of them have a lot to do with each other. It has to do with where my thoughts on the leaders comes from. And so that question is, well, actually, it's more a reaction to what I say. In my State of Decay playthroughs, I'll often say that I don't want to do this because the combat is tedious, or looting gets on my nerves, or I'll say that I don't really play the game for the combat, or I don't play the game for the looting. And a very logical question people ask me is, well, if you don't play it for the combat or the looting, then why are you even playing the game? Isn't that like most of the game right there? And I've never really had a good chance to talk about my response to that. Normally, I just kind of give them a front response, like it kind of gets the point across. But no, this is the real reason. The real reason is because the person who asks this of me is probably playing State of Decay from the perspective of being like a huge zombie survival fan. I'm not. I'm playing State of Decay 2 from being a huge management and strategy fan. And just like how, there's the board game Monopoly, and some people might not want to play that, but then you just make it Star Wars Monopoly, and then suddenly, I want to play it now. Not because, Monopoly was their thing, but it's Star Wars thing. Now suddenly they can play it. That's kind of how it is with State of Decay. Now, it doesn't go that far. I do like zombie games, and I do like survival games, but I like management games. Probably, I would just look at the channel, look at all the games I'm playing, like BattleTech, management strategy, MechWarrior, management action simulator, Subnautica, a adventure, it's management, survival, and adventure. The first game I ever played, Stardew Valley, management game. Anyways, the point is that just like how someone might, I want some Star Wars Monopoly. It's just a different, even if it's just a change in theme, I want a different kind of management game, but this time it has zombies in it. It's got zombies, and it's survival, and you don't get bit or you'll get infected. It's zombies, and that's the perspective that I come from it on, and that's why I like the economy in State of Decay 2. That's why I like building things in State of Decay 2, because I'm not coming to the game from the perspective of first and foremost seeking out a zombie survival experience. And honestly, that's what makes State of Decay 2 unique. And the leaders are a part of this, which is, we got to tie this back together. But let me complete the thought by saying that, think about other zombie games. The leaders, the management, and some of the strategic element, that's what makes State of Decay 2 unique. That's what makes it stand apart from other zombie games. Other zombie games have combat in it, so it's not the combat that makes State of Decay 2 different. I mean, I'm sure there's a zombie dating simulator out there, like, zombie coon or something like that. You got to go find out which zombie you want to date. I'm sure that exists where there's no combat element to it at all. But if it's a zombie game, you expect there to be combat in it. So the combat is not what makes State of Decay 2 unique. Is it the looting? No, there's a lot of zombie games that involve looting. In fact, zombies typically coincide with survival, and survival typically implies looting because there's going to be some type of resource management. A good example is a Dead Island. Is Dead Island like State of Decay 2? Only as much as there's zombies and there's chopping and there's looting. The similarities really end there. I guess there's special zombies, but Dead Island is more about the role-playing, character customization progression. State of Decay 2, what makes it different is the management strategy. And that's what attracts me to State of Decay 2, and that's where this criticism of the game is going to come from about the leaders. So, speaking of the leaders, and speaking about how I think Undead Labs should be capitalizing on what makes their game different, rather than what makes their game similar to other zombie games, we got this idea that there's 4 leaders, and the way it worked before the demotion mechanic came out was you had your leader, and if you wanted to change leaders, you had to off that character. You had to, blow them up, let them get eaten by zombies. That was the only way to change leaders. So there was, not permanence to it, but there was more consequence to it. Then they added in the demotion mechanic, and now you can just demote somebody. They drop back to being a citizen, I believe, or maybe even a recruit. I forgot. That they drop back in standing, and then someone else takes the lead. And if you want that demoted character to take the lead, you got to build up their standing again. Well, what this has effectively done is turn the leader characters into basically 5th skills. We could call them 6th skills. If you think about the primary 5th skills, why do you want them? Why do you want mechanics? Well, it's to unlock a feature. It's to unlock a feature in the game so that you can access it. That's why you want them. Well, that's basically what the leaders have been relegated to, especially due to demotion. You just want them temporarily in order to gain access to a certain building. And then when you've upgraded that building, you'll boot them out, bring the next leader in so that you can then build their buildings. And let's say it's the lumber mill. I don't know. You want to have all the leader buildings, so you put all the leader buildings in. Well, after you've done that, after you've gotten everything you need from the leaders, what else is to them? There's nothing else to them. At that point, your leader no longer matters. You could have no leader once you've actually upgraded everything, and it wouldn't be any different. There's nothing relevant to having an active leader, and that is the criticism I have, is that the leaders are presented, we gotta have a leader, it's really important. It's one of the things that the characters will actually mention, oh yeah, we should have a leader, or is anyone gonna step up to lead us? And ultimately, it doesn't matter. Once you get your stuff upgraded, it doesn't matter. So I think that has basically created this leader identity crisis in terms of the mechanics. In that, what is this? What good is this mechanic? It has essentially become a 6th skill. So one of the solutions that have been said to me is that, why maybe they just need to make more leaders. There needs to be a 5th leader, a 6th leader. Some people, why not some crazy cult guy who's whoa, the zombie apocalypse doomsayer guy. Now, I don't think that's a bad idea, but the problem, I don't think, is that there aren't enough leaders. The expression I'll use is that there's a saying that it's a mile wide, but it's an inch deep. And basically, if we just add more leaders, well, you're just going to have a bigger variety of the same problem. That, okay, you'll just cycle through all the leaders that are good to get the building you want, and once you build the buildings and upgrade them up to the max, who cares? It doesn't matter what your active leader is. There needs to be something impactful about the leader that you choose to be your current active leader. There needs to be positive benefits and also penalties, because if it's only good, then there's no consequence. Well, I guess the consequence would be that you had to give up the other leaders. But no, there has to be distinctively good and bad things. That's what makes a good consequential game. So this is what I think they need to do to improve leaders. And I want to emphasize, this is not a State of Decay 2 idea. This is a State of Decay 3. I don't know, maybe even a State of Decay 4 idea. And like I said, that whole intro, that whole 5-minute-ish section where I'm not even talking about State of Decay 2, this is where it's going to come into play. Like I said, I'm really into management games and strategy games. So games like Civilization, Stellaris, I'm into stuff like Oxygen Not Included, and this is where it's going to show. My first idea is, for leaders to be impactful, we need to have customized missions. I kind of got into this idea in the last one, the stealth discussion, But what I want to see is customized missions are going to be missions that you can create. So there's going to be the normal missions in the game. There's going to be random missions, but then there's going to be missions that you can create based on circumstances. And those could be, one of them is going to be intel. Intel is basically your knowledge of what's going on. Not your knowledge of you, the player, but the knowledge that your character would have. So it's something that you would have to go out and reveal this knowledge so that your character is aware of it, so that your character can have the tools to create their own missions. Now, these missions will kind of come in the form of like policies, like, these kind of things that you can enact, and they're going to revolve around you, they're going to revolve around your allies, around your enemies, and the neutral AI, and they're going to have their own intel, and they're going to have their own policies, and they're going to be marching towards their own objectives as well. I want the other human characters to have their own thing that they're working towards, and if you ignore them, who knows what's going to happen. I think that's a really important element as well. So the whole point of these customizable missions, though, is that each leader is going to have kind of their own perspective on this. So one leader will be able to create different kinds of missions than another leader. And that's going to kind of create this, like I said, an identity. This idea that each leader has a different mentality of the way they think will be the best way to survive the zombie outbreak. And by employing these missions where you get to choose from different conditions that are curated around a mixture of your intel and are also limited by which leader you are, I think that's going to like make it a lot more thematic, like so that you can actually feel like you're the warlord. You can feel like you're the traitor. You can feel like you're the builder, because you're going to be able to do warlord things. You're going to be able to do builder things. You'll be able to create missions revolving around the mentality of being like the sheriff or something. And so that's where this section part comes from. So we got customizable missions based on intel and policies of your leader. And remember, the AI is doing this too. And then the next thing you have are agendas. So the first thing is all of the sapient AI are going to have agenda. So basically the zombies don't have, the zombies might have an instinctual agenda, but all of the enclaves are going to have an agenda. And I want different sizes of enclaves. I want small enclaves. I want big enclaves. I want them to be able to gain size, reduce in size. I want them to, maybe a big enclave collapses and splits into 3 smaller enclaves. But the point is that all of the AI that are sapient, that are basically human, are going to have an agenda. And for you, all of your leader archetypes, so the builder, the sheriff, the warlord, and the traitor, all of them will have distinctive agendas that are different from one another. Now I've said this word a lot, agenda. What is an agenda? Well, simply put, it's just going to be some goal that a community has and the way that they think is best to obtain that goal. So the agenda of a warlord is going to be quite a bit different than the agenda of a traitor. They're going to have very different outlooks of how to survive in the zombie apocalypse. And I think that's really important to kind of the mythology of not just the zombie outbreak, but that I think is important to the whole mythology of apocalyptic stories, is when the governments of the world collapse and we're kind of back to the wild, wild west, what are the agendas of the emergent survivors? Like, how do they intend to survive in the zombie out or in the apocalypse? But in this case, our apocalypse is a zombie apocalypse. And so you've got this idea that you have agendas. Your agendas will differ depending on which leader you have. The AI have agendas, and you will either run with, you can run across the AI, you can run alongside the AI, or you can run neutrally, meaning maybe your agenda comes into conflict with one AI, then there's another AI who's like, oh yeah, we really like what you're doing, and then there's another AI who just doesn't care. They're like, whatever, what you're doing has no bearing on us. And that will cause some AI to naturally like you, some AI to naturally dislike you, and then some AI, they won't like you. And the game would have to take that into consideration, and maybe the AI will begin working more against you directly because they don't agree with your agenda, or your agenda is jeopardizing their agenda. Which, like I said, that's why there needs to be this kind of idea that the AI is going to have a bigger role to play, because having the different leaders it's really only part of the problem. If you don't, like, what's the point of being the warlord if there are no other people for you to warlord over? If it's just the zombies, then, like, what kind of warlord are you? If there are no other AI and they don't have their own goals, like, what good is the trader going to? Are you going to trade with zombies? You need these other AI, and these other AI have to have simulated desires so that your thematic feel of, like, I'm the basically, what good is being a sheriff if you don't have people to protect, and you don't have, like, bandits to arrest, you don't have, like, a peace to keep? And all of these AI need to have their own goals and desires, aka agendas, in order for that to feel thematic. And that's why I think it's really important to kind of approach this from that's why this is not a State of Decay 2 change. This is like a much more systematic it's just something that's just missing from the game altogether, something that needs to be built upon. So one of the things I want is, like I said, I want the AI to move towards their own goals. Now, this could cause them to become stronger, and I want them to actually be able to occupy a primary base location and have their own 8, 12, maybe bigger community than that. And they can start to subjugate, or they can start interacting with smaller enclaves. Like, this is where that management background is coming from. This is basically like, you got, in Civilization, you have, well, civilizations. You got, like, Egypt, you got, like, Rome, and those are the major players. And then you've got, like, city-states. City-states are AI controlled. They don't try to win the game, but they play the game, but they're not trying to win it. And that's kind of like the relationship where you, the player of State of Decay 2, you're like a major civilization, and then you can have smaller enclaves that are like these city-states where they can help you, they can hinder you, they could be your downfall. Like, maybe a whole bunch of city-states, like, rise up against you and they wind up being your downfall. Or the reverse could be true. You could rally them to your side and overcome a greater threat. But the point is that the AI, they should be able to grow and become strong. They should be able to self-destruct, like, even without you interacting with them. They should have the possibility of, like, they just completely crumble and maybe the zombies overrun them. Maybe they're betrayed and then zombies overrun them. The agendas could cause them to become friendlier to you or more hostile, different degrees of it too. They become very friendly, or maybe they're afraid of you, and so they're like, oh, let's give them gifts so that, they'll like us more. Or they could become hostile to you. They might be like, oh, you're looting our territory. Like, this is our stuff. You need to back off. Or, we're going to start patrolling the streets and we're going to start taking shots at you. And that's what I think another component of making the leaders really interesting. So let's get to this kind of like final section, which is the leaders themselves. So not only will each of the 4 leaders have their own agenda, I think that there should be variation in each leader, so that if you were to get redundant leaders, so let's say you got 2 traders, I want the character, each character to be randomly generated with one of 3 variations of the leader they are. And we're going to call them, I guess, good, neutral, and evil. I don't like those terms, but they're the easiest to visualize. So if you get a trader, you don't know, are they a good trader, a neutral trader, or an evil trader? And like I said, this is just to kind of give a little bit of variation, but also give this idea that if you want to change leaders, it's not too bad to change from one trader to another trader, but there'll have to be a big consequence from just changing from a trader to, like, a warlord. Like, the people that you've previously brokered deals with are kind of, whoa, he's going all, like, super warlord mode. Hold on a second. We didn't sign up for this. Or, like, well, what about all of our trade agreements? Like, what's happening? Like, there should be something that kind of shakes things up. Like there should be like a permanence. Like when you become a leader, there should be an amount of entrenchment where breaking away from it is possible, but there's some kind of drawback to it. The idea is just to give a feel like there are different types of ways you can be a warlord, but also to make each leader feel really distinctive, really important, and also impactful where you question whether you can't just flip leaders. Like I think that that would just cause chaos in a group if you think about it. Like if you're in the zombie and then also you change leaders, like that should be a really chaotic upheaval kind of thing. It shouldn't be something that you could just do easily. So back to the 3 different types of leaders. So like I said, I don't like good, neutral, and evil. They're just kind of an easy way to understand it. It'd probably be more accurate to say that one of them is going to be a platonic, objective moral good kind of outlook on life. They're going to be the altruistic one. You're the trader, but you don't trade for as hard of a profit. You want people to like you, and you want to grow the community. You want to grow a chain of communities. The downside to being this kind of platonic, objective moral good is that this character is a bit more gullible, or they don't have a choice but to expose themselves to leeches. They don't have a choice but to expose themselves to opportunists because they have to give people a chance. So on one hand, they're altruistic, and one of the penalties of that would be that you'd be trading for not much of a profit, but you could potentially get so many people who like you, that you have so many people to trade with, that you would ultimately make this huge empire. But on the other hand, you'd have to worry about people who are not pulling their weight and are just preying upon your altruism, or they're looking to backstab you. That would be the disadvantage to it. Then you'd have a neutral leader, the normal everyday trader, for example. And because you're not taking a stand, you're kind of being boring, you're being very risk averse. The way I would want the neutral leader to work is they have the most boring, vanilla, safe options. So when they're making their custom missions, they can't get a big impact out of it, but they don't get any real major penalty out of it either. So you're never going to reach your true potential by having a neutral leader, but there's not a lot of penalties to it either. Then instead of having, because like I said, good, neutral, and evil, they're just really brute force terms. I don't really like that. So then on the flip side, you would have the kind of Nietzschean Übermensch, the rejection of the moral objectivity, the idea that what morality is not objective. All that matters are the results. The ends justifies the means. And in terms of a leader, so you got the platonic trader who is altruistic, who willingly is generous with people to get them to like him. Well, the Nietzschean trader is going to be this kind of mafia guy who he cares first and foremost about his own community, and to some degree maybe those who have earned his favor he'll be concerned about, but never to the same level as his own community. And he just doesn't give a damn about anyone else. He'll protection rackets, I'll show you trading with people, and just all these ways of he's not afraid to swindle people. He's not afraid to set up people in bad deals, pit people against each other. It's just my community comes first. And other people who are growing, they could grow into a threat. So I'm going to make sure that my allies succeed, but I don't want them to succeed too much. And so that's where you get this idea where it's not good, neutral, and evil, though most people would see it that way, but rather the idea that in the zombie apocalypse, you're going to have people who are more altruistic, and then you're going to have more people who are more cynical. And I think, once again, that's really important to not just the zombie outbreak, but to the apocalypse mythology of not just, are you a warlord? Are you a sheriff? But what kind are you? Are you more altruistic? Are you more cynical? Are you just kind of in the middle? And I think that would really allow people to live out their apocalyptic fantasy a lot better, while at the same time enabling very interesting game mechanics. Like I said, the whole point of this is to create unique missions. They'll allow you to control the game in a new way. So, ultimately, to wrap everything up, because I think we've discussed this long enough. I think that the game needs more in-depth changes. Basically, we need to avoid this whole a mile wide and an inch deep. This is why I'm not all that into the combat. I don't dislike the combat, but I'm not super into it. I'm not super into the looting. I don't dislike it, but I'm not super into it. And that's also like, people say, why do you complain about free guns and stuff? It's because it has nothing to do with what I'm interested in the game. Now, some people, they're playing it for the collection component, so I get it why they like it. But that's not what I'm into. I'm into the game for the interesting management, the economic elements, all that kind of like macro strategy stuff. So what I want to see, I don't want to see this proverbial lake become 2 miles wide and half an inch deep. I want to start, digging deeper into that. And that's why, rather than say, like, instead of adding a 5th leader, the 4 leaders we have right now, they're super interesting. They're super awesome. But they just need to be more compelling. And I think this is the way to do it. And like I said, it can't be done for State of Decay 2. This is like a completely new approach to it. And I hope Undead Labs understands this kind of thing. Because Jeffrey Card, he plays Civilization. He said it's one of his favorite games. So certainly he has to know that what makes State of Decay 2 different than like Dying Light and other zombie, what was it, Dead Island, different than Left 4 Dead, is the strategy and management simulation in the game. And that's what they really need to focus on to continue making State of Decay unique and distinctive from other zombie games, because all of them have combat. All of them have zombies. They typically have hostile humans who are against you. But what makes State of Decay 2 different, more unique, I'm sure there are other management zombie games out there, but State of Decay 2 is one of them. And I think that is what they should be focusing on to make it more interesting. Anyways, that's what I think. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. Like, what do you think would be the good warlord, the bad warlord, the quote-unquote bad warlord, and so forth? Like, what would... And which would you envision yourself to be? Me, I would envision myself to be the cynical Nietzschean traitor. Like the grip my opponents in crippling debt and make them like they have no choice but to like serve me because they're helpless on their own. I crush them in crippling debt. You have to pay your mafia lord his due, and then he'll protect you and give you supplies in return. Like that's the kind of that's the kind of leader that I would want to play in State of Decay 3. Theoretically, but let me know what you would want to do down in the comment section below. At any rate, like this video if it was interesting. Subscribe for future State of Decay 2 content. Of course, remember that you don't have to be good to get good.